And welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King, joined here by Jason Caldwell, Christian Clemente, and Patrick Bingham will join us later on in the show in another edition of Thursday Night Live, presented by AU Club. Some different circumstances today, so we're recording a little bit early, recording online, trick-or-treating going on in Auburn this evening, so that gets a big priority, of course, and Auburn basketball. We'll be playing an exhibition game in Atlanta at 7:30 Central Time against Memphis. So should be a good one. We'll talk a little bit about that and what we expect to see in the final tune-up for this team. It's crazy to think about Monday is the season opener for the Stephen Pearl era. But talking about Auburn football, of course, coming back home this Saturday at Jordan-Hare Stadium, an opportunity for this team to stack SEC wins for the first time since 2023. They did not have consecutive SEC wins last season. Of course, they got their first against Arkansas last weekend. Jason, you could pretty clearly make the argument that Auburn is playing the two worst SEC teams in back-to-back weeks, depending on, I guess just what side of that argument you want to be on. But Kentucky, however, just like Arkansas, was scary and had some scary elements. That's the word Hugh Freeze has been using to describe Kentucky, because I think he wants to get it across that, hey, this is a home game against a winless SEC team. It's not like Kentucky has not had opportunities like Auburn to beat some good SEC teams this season.
Yeah, I think you look the bottom of the league and you go Arkansas, 3-point game against Texas A&M, who's a playoff team, more than likely. Kentucky pushed Ole Miss pretty good, and that was with Jack Calzada playing quarterback, and this is a completely different football team now, but that was a pretty good game. Both of them played Texas down to the wire. Texas is still a team with 2 losses. I mean, Mississippi State did, Mississippi State's the other team that you look at that's winless, and like they were 17 points ahead of Texas in the second half. This one being at home makes it feel a little bit different for Auburn, but it's still it's a dangerous game because you haven't proven that you can go run away and hide from anyone, and that's when games normally you can be a little bit different in those scenarios. For this Auburn team, every game feels like you're going to have to grind it out. And when you do that, you leave yourself open to play in one of these fourth quarter games against a team like Kentucky. So, can you get a bump from a potential quarterback change, which I think we both feel like is probably going to happen with Ashton Daniels, but can that give you a little bit more spark on offense? That's been the key word for Hugh Freeze for the last 2 weeks is spark. Can you get a spark on offense that can maybe unlock some things on that side of the ball? That's going to be a question mark.
Yeah, and as we talked to Hugh Freeze earlier today, as we record this on Thursday, same sort of things about the quarterbacks. However, he did say that they will make a decision on Friday whether to go with Ashton Daniels or Jackson Arnold. I think at this point, now we're not expecting him to name a starter. He said on Tiger Talk on Monday he doesn't want to come out at any point and try to give Kentucky an edge, and that's completely reasonable to do that. But at this point, I think you and I and everybody else would be pretty surprised if it's not Ashton Daniels. Number one, because of what we saw on practice on Tuesday, where it was if you just walked into practice and didn't know the quarterback situation, you would assume he's the starter. And then just also the fact that, like you said, Jason, they need something different. And Ashton Daniels, to me, did not do anything against Arkansas to make me think, oh, well, you got to put Jackson Arnold back in. I would think, no, give him a week of preparation, see how he does, and see if he can play within the offense again.
Yeah, and this is a different feeling. People have talked about, like, when you did this last year, and, Hank Brown, and this guy has 20 starts in his last 2 years at Stanford. It's a much different scenario than Hank Brown, who had not really played and kind of got thrust into that situation last year. Ashton Daniels has played a lot of football, has started a lot of games, and so I think because of that, you kind of have the expectation that the moment not going to be too big for him. The moment wasn't too big for him coming in with Auburn down 11 last weekend, played under composure, under control, looked very poised. I would expect the same things out of him if he's the guy on Saturday night, and see, like I said, see if they can find some things in the passing game to go along with the run, because Kentucky has given up a lot of plays, a lot of yards on that side of the ball through the air. You still got to run it, but I think, can you find some things in the passing game that might work as well?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about this when we were leaving football today. I mean, you're in a position here where you can, regardless of who is playing quarterback, I think this is the kind of game where you can lean on your defense and lean on your running game. And I say that because it may have taken too long especially on offense. But I think Auburn's found its identity. I think Auburn has found its identity. I think it's when you look at a team that has a top 20 defense nationally and has the number 2 rusher in the SEC, it's pretty clear what you should do from there. You should lean on your ground game, and you should let your defense put in the work for you. I think against Kentucky in a night game and a home game, you're absolutely going to do that. But you mentioned kind of the pieces around Ashton Daniels. I think it's no small thing. I wonder how much we're going to be talking about this on Saturday. I think Darrell Robinson being back is decently important because yes, Jeremiah Cobb is going to get his touches. Is he going to carry it 28 times? If it's working, maybe, but it just gives you more flexibility as an offense. And look, Omar Mabson did some good things against Arkansas. He's been fine, so far. I think it makes a really, I think it's a pretty big deal to have Darrell back and have a true 3 deep at running back where you feel like you can look to one of 2 guys on the bench and say, hey, give us some carries here and there, and we're going to let Jeremiah rest up.
Yeah, if you can have success running it and do some things there and if you could get 4 or 5 carries each out of those other guys and give yourself 30 carries in a game where Jeremiah Cobb has 22. I thought he got a little winded against Arkansas. There were a couple of those runs outside on a wet track too that probably helped to slow him down some. And he kind of said, hey, I got to tap out right now. And so I think, can you keep him fresh while still running the football? A lot of that depends on how much success you have. Kentucky's been okay against the run. Haven't been great. But it's hard to tell some too because teams have been so good throwing the football against them. The teams just haven't had to run it a whole bunch. They've just said Tennessee just kept throwing. Like Auburn's going to want to run the football. Auburn had a lot of success running the football last year against Kentucky. Same defensive coordinator. And honestly, that defensive front felt like it was a better group than this one is. You had some NFL guys up there. Can you have success and find success again running the football on Saturday night? Obviously, that'd be a big deal.
And to your point, I was looking at Kentucky's run defense numbers because that's something Hugh Freeze has brought up this week is that they can defend the run pretty well. When you look at like the totality of the season, it's pretty good. I look at their 2 road games so far, 178 yards given up on the ground to South Carolina, 180 given up to Georgia. So it stands to reason if Auburn can do some of the same things it did against Arkansas, you should be able to establish that for Ashton Daniels. As we stay on the offensive side of the ball, it's worth noting a couple injuries at wide receiver for Auburn. But as Hugh Freeze said today after practice, both those guys are expected to go. The one that everyone knows is Cam Coleman. He had his ankle rolled up on by an Arkansas defender in that game. Came back in, didn't catch any more passes. Still does not sound like he has gone full speed in practice, but that's mainly because today was not a full speed practice. He didn't really have the opportunity to do that. But the language Freeze has been using is like he'd be surprised if he's not at least going to give it a go. The other one's Malcolm Simmons. I figured, Jason, when I saw it on the injury report, because we knew he had that shoulder issue, I figured they were just kind of taking a look at that. But apparently hyperextended his knee in Tuesday's practice. Also said that he would be surprised if Simmons doesn't go. So seems like a decently healthy outlook for them. The other injuries to note, Connor Gibbs, hip flexor, is what Hugh Freeze said today. Of course, he's been their kickoff guy. He expected him to play as well. And then he said he would list Jordan Crawford as doubtful, the freshman defensive tackle. So nothing too significant for Auburn at the moment. But having a guy like Cam Coleman, my thing is that you want him to be 100% because Hugh Freeze said he hasn't done much other than just like straight line stuff. And he's really going to get you on those double moves. He's not just going to blow past you on straight line routes. And so I think it's another game where maybe you try to get some deep shots with guys like Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. But really, if you're Ashton Daniels, take what the defense is giving you and try to take advantage of a Kentucky secondary that, number one, is beat up and number two, has not really stopped much of anybody this season.
Yeah, Malcolm, look, both I think it's worth noting, we've seen both Malcolm and Cam in blue jerseys. They're not in yellow. Yeah. So they've been out there and having those kind of jerseys. So I think both those guys are kind of smiling. I feel like we'll see both those guys Saturday night, especially because we're still, that's a late game Saturday. You got a lot of time for a lot of treatment Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning to get prepared for that. So, yeah, I think we'll see both those guys. Brandon Frazier has still been banged up a little bit with an ankle. Should be better this week than he was last week, and he was able to play some against Arkansas. See more of him against Kentucky as well. So that's good news for this passing game. And Ashton Daniels did a good job of finding secondary guys, whether it was tight end or whether it was running backs, and I think that could be something that could be a really big deal on Saturday, because Kentucky's going to try to commit some guys to the run.
Yeah, and I mean, that's probably all you need to do in a game like this. I just don't suspect that you're going to have to score too many points. But at the same time, as we'll kind of flip here and talk about Auburn's defense against this Kentucky offense, it's a different challenge now. We expected to see former Auburn quarterback who didn't play at Auburn but was on the team that one season, Zach Calzada. He was the starter in week 1 for Kentucky. It just wasn't really working out, and they go to Cutter Boley, who is a redshirt freshman. Has been very explosive throwing the football over the last few games. 5 touchdown passes against Tennessee. They found themselves in a shootout last weekend. In his 4 SEC starts, Jason, he's completing 69% of his passes. We're used to Kentucky being, pounded on the ground and play good defense. A little bit of a reversal for this year's Kentucky team, and I think that gives Auburn a little bit of concern, and you got to play a good game because, as we know, Auburn's much better against the run than they are against the pass. So I think Kentucky's going to try to take the top off on them a few times, and that's going to be a big key in this game.
They always saw last week against Arkansas, you give up a couple of deep shots, and like I said, as good as this defense has been this season, you start looking at passing plays allowed this year, where you start talking about chunk yardage plays, and like Auburn's is way down there when you start talking about allowing long passing plays. I think the ones of over 20 yards is that the one. There's one of them where they've given up a pretty good bit, but that's a concern because Cutter Boley's a guy that's done some good things, and he has made some plays in the passing game. Got a lot of different targets, not necessarily one true guy. Got a bunch of transfers at wide receiver, a couple of tight ends that can make plays. So he's done a good job of spreading it around, but they've gone from what you think about Kentucky being, which is a pound it, and hey, they got 2 big backs, so they do have some guys. Very experienced offensive line. This is an offense, if you let them have a little success, can scare you some. And so I think that's the thing. If you're Auburn, again, it always comes back to, can you make them one-dimensional, even though they've thrown it well? You got to put the ball in his hands as a freshman and say, hey, you're going to have to come beat us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in those 2 road games so far this season, just not a lot going. I don't know if did he play at South Carolina? I know he played at Georgia.
He's been since, I think, Eastern Michigan. So he's had 5 starts. So he's had a couple on the road.
Yeah, and neither of those games Kentucky scored very much, and so you're wanting to keep that same formula. Yeah, the stat you mentioned, I mean, they're number 90. Auburn's number 93 in number 97 nationally in yards per attempt. So that's not very good. And the explosive completions of 20 yards or more, Auburn has given up 26 of those this season. That's the 4th most in the SEC. And so again, you're gonna. Unless you're like the elite of the elite, your defense is going to have some sort of stat that you're like, oh, okay, that's not necessarily what you want. Obviously, DJ Durkin's unit has been tremendous for the most part, but maybe a little bit gettable in the passing game. So that'll be something to watch. I mean, overall in this game, Jason, I mean, number one, this is another we talked about last week. Arkansas, must win is kind of a overused term, but more like can't lose is the way to look at it. Feels like that again because number one, you have to give yourself an opportunity to make a turnaround here.
Yeah.
Beating Arkansas and Kentucky, you absolutely have to do that. Number 2, Arkansas was one thing, is on the road. This is the perception, even if Kentucky's a better team than Arkansas. I'm sorry, you just can't lose at home.
No, I mean, this
season.
Correct. This is a game where you go, look, there's certain games where you go, somebody might not have these opportunities, but right now for this Auburn team, you go, look, this is a game you should win. And you've had some toss-up games. I mean, Baylor, and then all 4 of the games you lost where you go, look, you could have won those games. Those were toss-up games, though. Felt like Arkansas, because the situation was probably a toss-up game, just because you just didn't know. This one feels like the first time since Ball State and South Alabama where you go, this game where you definitely feel like Auburn should win a game. That's a different feeling. How do you handle that? And so that's the challenge for this team now. It's like, go out now and play like a team that expects to win. And they haven't done those things. The second half, they kind of had a little bit of that edge, and they've continued to play hard. Can you now take that into a game and play that way for 60 minutes? If they can do that, then this is a team that could do some things down the stretch this season. But we just haven't seen that to this point.
At the end of the day, all you can do is focus on 1 week at a time. I thought Hugh Freeze talked about it, on Monday when asked about Ashton Daniels and his red shirt and all that stuff. He's like, got to beat Kentucky, and that's what they have to do right now, because as much as I would like to look forward to and wonder what this season's going to look like, I think Vanderbilt is so important. Like, it just, to me, that is such a huge game, because let's just assume they lose to Alabama because Alabama looks awesome. Yes, that you never know, but like that just maybe it's the difference in you going 7-5, but it's like you don't get to that conversation unless you beat Kentucky. So we'll be having a much different conversation next week if this team loses to Kentucky. We'll see how that goes, but should be a good one. Auburn's very glad to have. Look, we went a few years with Auburn being like, man, can they get a night game or two in Jordan Hare? Well, how about 3 straight home night games? They would like to win one of them because they lost the last 2. So 6:30 Central Time. This would be 5 straight wins in the series over Kentucky. Of course, this is the first time Kentucky has come to Auburn since the COVID year, when that wasn't supposed to be the season opener, but it was in like late September, because that's how that season turned out. We'll touch on a few more games before we bring in Patrick's pick of the week. But to me, the game of the week in the SEC, this is actually a really big bye week for a lot of teams. Like a lot of teams are on bye. Not that many high-profile games in the league, but
or around the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw this is the least amount of games of any week in the season. This is just a popular bye week. Oklahoma at Tennessee. You have one team that looks really bad on offense but has a great defense, and another team that looks really good on offense but has a bad defense. I just think Oklahoma doesn't have it on offense. I agree. It just, I'm not seeing it. And Mateer is not 100% healthy, probably. Can their defense do enough to go win in Knoxville? I think people are underrating Tennessee. I still think Tennessee is a potential playoff team, and I like them to get this win at home. Their defense is very iffy. I will say they have the 7th most sacks in the country. So they're one of those like all or nothing teams. I think with how Oklahoma's playing, you just send a bunch of dudes after him and try to slow him down. So should be interesting. I think Tennessee will win this one.
Yeah, I got the home team here. You're right. I think it may be 2 teams go like, look to see how can we impact the other quarterback, and Tennessee has shown that they can score, and they've done a good job of that this season. So, I think I just don't know that Oklahoma can score enough in that game to go win.
The other one, ranked matchup in the league, Vanderbilt at Texas. A top 10 Vanderbilt team playing on the road at Texas. Of course, this is the game for Vandy before they host Auburn next weekend. I have not looked, and I probably wouldn't be smart to like make any concrete things right now about Arch Manning and his status, just because things could change after we record. But I know he was in concussion protocol early this week. Could be Matthew Caldwell from dear old Auburn High starting for Texas. I could totally see this being a game that we look up in the 4th quarter and it's 17-3 Texas, and it's just like they just grinded them to a paste. But I can't make that pick. I'm just not confident in that. I think Vandy is straight up a top 10 team and is very, very good. And this would be, Jason, I mean, goodness gracious. Like, you're just counting all the huge monumental wins Vanderbilt has stacked up over the last couple seasons. This would be another one. I mean, winning at DKR, it would be unbelievable.
Yeah. This one to me feels like that the best thing that could have happened for Texas is having quarterback issues, because it makes you lean on the run game. They just haven't run the ball nearly enough with a guy like Arch Manning at quarterback who can run it. It makes me believe that Texas goes in and goes, okay, now we got to go run the football. And all of a sudden you go, man, that's a pretty good idea. We need to do that more often. And it sounds familiar. We've heard that same thing this season as well. I think it helps Texas. I picked Texas to win because I think at the end of the day, they're better on the line of scrimmage. They just haven't done it enough. They haven't run the football, haven't tried to run it. I think this weekend they'll have to do that. And that defense is pretty good. And so I see one of those where you look up and it's 17-9 in the 4th quarter, and Vanderbilt may have the ball trying to score or something like that. So I think Texas does enough to squeak one out.
Yeah, when you're Vandy, and I look ahead and I think Auburn actually might match up decently well in this category as well, because when you're Vandy and you're playing a team that has a really good defense and can run the ball, all of a sudden your ball control offense, you're down a score in the second half. It's like you're not built to try to come back on that against another sort of ball control team. So yeah, if Texas can kind of do that, we'll just bounce around a couple other games, and then we'll bring in Patrick for his game of the week. Miami at SMU is really interesting. One of the best G5 games in the country this season. Navy, unbeaten Navy at North Texas after their quarterback just threw for 1 billion yards.
I'll say that is a contrast in styles too.
Absolutely. Texas Tech at K-State. Kansas State maybe has their stuff together. Texas Tech has quarterback injuries, and we'll see how that goes. Virginia has to play all the way on the road at Cal. Also, somehow they pulled this off. This is their first trip to either Stanford or Cal since they joined the ACC. So good for you, Virginia, for not having to make any of those trips yet. Speaking from experience, it will be a very long trip for you on Saturday.
Absolutely.
USC at Nebraska is really interesting in kind of that middle pack of the Big Ten. Both of those teams wanting to make some hay here at the end of the year. And then College Game Day is at Cincinnati at Utah. Really, really great Cincinnati offense and a Utah team that looked like complete domination against Colorado, whether they have their stuff together. We'll be looking to bounce back. Lost a couple weeks ago to BYU. And so we'll pause here and bring in Patrick for his sexy game of the week. And here is Patrick, who is kind enough to join us before getting on the road to head to Atlanta for the exhibition game tonight. Young Pat, what do you have for us this evening?
Well, not a lot of games to pick from this week. As you said earlier, I was scrolling through and I was like, there's just not a lot of options. But we're gonna go, we've tried to hit all the conferences, but we'll go ACC this time. We have not shouted out friend of the program, Bill Belichick, yet, and his fabulous season so far at North Carolina. For those that haven't checked in since the TCU bloodbath, they're still 2-5, and they haven't won a conference game yet. But they play Syracuse this weekend on the road up in New York. Syracuse, they beat Clemson. I think we all kind of watched that and have tuned out. Well, they lost their quarterback after that. They haven't scored more than 18 points yet. That's losses to Georgia Tech 41-16, Pitt 30-13, SMU 31-18, Duke 38-3. I will say those are some of the better ACC teams that they've lost to, but it's kind of like, okay, Bill, now's your chance to maybe win a game. And it's also Halloween, and we know Bill Belichick is a fan of costumes, and so I don't know if they have a couple's costume coming up or anything, but just wanted to shout out our friend on his big holiday. So we'll see if he has anything. The game is on Halloween, by the way. It's on Friday, so we'll see how that goes.
I did not realize the Syracuse schedule, and they got the raw end of the deal in the ACC. So they opened with Tennessee, Clemson, Duke, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, Notre Dame. They still have, after this North Carolina game, they're still at Miami and at Notre Dame. And they've lost 4 straight. If they lose this game, they will lose 7 straight games and have an 8-loss season at a minimum and play Boston College at the end. So after that Fran Brown kind of breakthrough year last year, they are careening towards, 4-8, maybe 5-7. But you better not lose North Carolina. That would be a rough one right there.
What's your lean, Patrick? The Syracuse 2.5-point favorite.
I'll go with Bill. It's Halloween. Maybe there's some magic. They've been closer. They were that yard away against Florida State. I forget who they play. I just know the last 2 weeks they've been closer. So
Cal,
they'll finally get over the hump.
They had a close one to Cal. So
they took Virginia to overtime, and Virginia is unbeaten in the ACC.
Syracuse looks terrible based on the scores they played against better teams. I might go to North Carolina as well. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think that's maybe where we are right now in the ACC.
According to ESPN, you can get a ticket to this game for $5.
I would say you probably $5 and a hot dog.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick, for your that. You know what? If for no other reason than the Halloween costume, and I'm talking about Bill Belichick, of course, in this scenario, you did live up to the sexy game of the week. So thank you for blessing us with that. We will pause again and shift to a bit of a recruiting segment with another Auburn home game coming up and bring in Christian Clemente.
Yeah, Jason, it's not a marquee opponent necessarily with Kentucky coming into town, but it's a night game. And more than that, I think it wouldn't matter if it was a night game or not. There's only a few recruiting opportunities left this season, as crazy as that is to believe. You've got Mercer, which is not much of a recruiting opportunity. And then you've got the Iron Bowl. those are your final opportunities before signing day, with the moved up signing day that got changed last year, and same again this year with the early signing period opening up on December 3rd. That's your last 3 chances to get guys on campus for games. Now, you could get them on campus for a practice during the week, get them on campus during a bye week, something like that. Go see them during the bye week. But chances are dwindling to get guys on campus, and Auburn is definitely taking advantage of that this weekend, getting a good group of visitors in. Really interesting group, especially when you consider the official visitors, and there's a transfer visitor in October. That's just where we're at in college football now. We'll start with him, Josh Ford, the Oklahoma State tight end transfer, entered the portal after Mike Gundy got fired. The window opens up for those guys. Now that rule has changed because rules are changing every week.
Yeah.
But he took advantage of it. He redshirted this year after playing in the first 4 games. Started in 6 games as a true freshman last year. Big kid, 6'5", 6'6", something like that, 265 pounds. Look, tight end, we've said it multiple times. It is going to be one of the biggest needs for Auburn in the transfer portal this offseason. Brandon Frazier's gone. Tate Johnson is gone. Ryan G has played sparingly. Hollis Davidson has been on scout team, hasn't played at all. And Preston Howard has obviously dealt with some pretty serious inconsistencies.
Yes.
So tight end is going to be a huge need. Auburn's already going to work trying to get one in. Josh Ford visited Oklahoma last weekend. He's from Stillwater, so visited Oklahoma last weekend, visiting Auburn this weekend. Really interesting that he's already going to be on campus.
Yeah, no, see these guys that, I would say probably would try to make a decision pretty quickly because once the semester ends, technically this is a guy that could probably get in if you make it to a bowl game and start practicing, doing a few things because of this rule change, because of the way things gone. So, yeah, I mean, no question, tight end. I think probably 2 transfer tight ends at a minimum for this roster when you're looking at it to try to find some guys that are coming in physically ready to play right now. Ryan G's a guy I think obviously will step in and play more next season, but I still think you're probably looking at a couple of transfers, and this is one of those options for sure.
Yeah, 2, maybe even 3. I mean,
maybe depending on what they look like and how many years they have.
Yeah, what happens? Does Preston Howard come back? Does Auburn try and move on there? What happens? Not to dog on Preston, but it's pretty common knowledge that he's struggled this season in different opportunities, and then you don't really know what you have in Hollis Davidson because he hasn't played at all. And you've got Kentrell White committed from the high school ranks, but he's a guy that, look, we've said it, he's more of a developmental piece, going to need some time to put some weight on his frame. He's definitely not a guy that you're lining up in line, at least for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then, Jason, the other official visitor that's coming in, Oliver Miller. I think that's his name. I should know that. Yes, Oliver Miller.
Yeah.
Kansas State offensive tackle commit from Colorado. He was supposed to visit a couple of weeks ago. I believe it was for the Georgia game. He was unable to make it in. Look, Auburn really likes this guy. They like him as a potential tackle, guy that could move inside a little bit. They've already got 3 offensive linemen committed, and Nico Heppy, Wilson Zaire, and Parker Pritchett. Looking to add 1 or 2 more from high school in this class. Oliver Miller has kind of emerged as one of those main guys to know. When he wasn't able to make that visit earlier this year, it was just kind of a scheduling thing. Look, he's from Colorado, and it was going to be an unofficial visit. For those that don't know the difference, that means that Oliver and his family would pay for that visit. They would do it out of their own dime. This is an official visit, so Auburn is sponsoring, in a sense, the visit and paying for him to come down and take the trip. So it's kind of your one chance to make a big splash with him. You're probably not going to get him back for the Iron Bowl just because of where he's from. So this is your chance to try and make a mark.
Yeah, big kid, listed at 6'6", 300 pounds, really athletic, and you start looking at thinking about positions of need, obviously rebuilding and continue to rebuild the offensive line. We would expect a couple of transfer guys there as well. But heck, you're sitting at a point now where Xavier Chaplin's a guy that you might get back. Heck, you might even get him back for a year now, depending on what happens. So it might free you up to go a little bit more high school, depending on what happens with a couple of these guys.
That'd be really beneficial. Look, Xavier has had some issues with false starts and whatnot, but I feel like he's played
much better. I think, especially the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's done better. And heck, who knows what happens with Connor Lee? I mean, there's a chance you could have Xavier Chaplin, Connor Lee back, along with Cale Ellis.
I was going to say a little more experienced Cale Ellis.
And so you start going, man, that might be 3 pretty good building blocks for an offensive line. So, yeah, all these things are all very fluid when you start talking about recruiting and transfers and high school kids.
Yeah. Jason, moving on to some of the unofficial visitors that are being two kind of defensive ends / buck guys. Anthony Tank Jones, the 5-star Oregon commit from in-state. Nolan Wilson, the 4-star from Mississippi, who's been committed to Alabama since the summer. Tank was here for the Georgia game. Nolan Wilson has not visited this fall. Last time he was here was his official visit in mid-June or so there. So really interesting. You look at positions that Auburn needs. They don't have a defensive end or a buck committed in this class. And we've talked about it several times on the show. Defensive end probably in a better spot next year. Amaris Williams, Jared Smith, guys that both should be back, but expect Keldrick Falk to go high in the NFL draft. Keyron Crawford is out of eligibility, also probably going to the NFL. Chris Murray out of eligibility. Then your younger guys there at Buck, you haven't seen JJ Falk, you haven't seen Jamonte Waller, you haven't seen Joe Phillips. Guys
Jared
that
Smith.
Jared Smith played a little bit more defensive end though.
Yeah.
But he could move around. Same with Amaris. But look, you need some guys at that position. You'll need some experience in the portal as well, but you need some young guys as well. Tank Jones and Nolan Wilson. Tank more than Nolan, in my opinion, is definitely a little bit more interesting to me. Yeah. Nolan Wilson, maybe something comes out of this visit, but I feel like that one is going to be a hard sell, trying to flip him from Alabama. Tank, you're getting in for the second time. He's from the state. He's committed to Oregon, so way out of state. He's visited other places this fall. He's gone to see Texas A&M. He's gone to see Miami. I'm not saying he's open, but he's also there's a chance there.
I agree. I think you start. I mean, this is the 5-star composite. I think 22 in the composite, and people might maybe dismiss Auburn's chances because they're sitting here at 4-4, and you're committed to Oregon. I think Auburn has a legitimate shot here, especially getting Shadarius Tootle back in. Tootle, he'll be back up with his brother. They're both committed. Having those guys committed to Auburn and working on him and doing those things, that could be a big part of this as well. So I think Auburn is legitimately in the picture with Tank Jones, and that'd be a pretty impressive one to grab if you could add him to this defensive haul. Like I said, a guy that could come in and potentially play early.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Bellantoni has been working hard there. Vontrell King-Williams has been involved there as well. And you want to talk about, look, recruiting is in an interesting spot right now. You just have to say it because of where Auburn is at this season and potential uncertainty surrounding the staff. But if you want to look at positions where it's probably a little bit easier to recruit to at this point, it's a little bit easier to sell. Defensive line, defensive end, buck, combining those two positions, that's one of those spots. Keldrick Falk is headed to be a first-round NFL draft pick after 3 seasons. Keyron Crawford has played his way into probably being an NFL draft selection of some sort under this staff. If you're selling that to a guy like Tank Jones and saying, look, these guys are gone, we need help right away, we believe that you can contribute right away next year, that's an easier recruiting pitch than, say, a wide receiver or a quarterback, just throwing random positions out there.
Yeah, no, I think you have some selling points there. I think stay at home. Look, we can get you to the NFL. We feel like we're getting better. Like all those things you can sell right now, and so I think that's going to be something to watch for him. And like I said, I think a really interesting group of 27 kids, especially coming in, and some really strong quarterback 27 prospects expected in, right, Christian?
Yeah, Gunnar Rivers. I'll be geeking out if Phillip is there. Already got a chance to meet Phillip when they visited in the spring. But look, I'm racking up Chargers guys. Joe Ortiz was there earlier this year. Got to meet the Chargers GM. Already got to meet Phillip Rivers. For those that don't know, I'm a Chargers fan, so kind of cool and kind of fun. But look, Gunnar Rivers is a baller. Bias aside, he's ranked as one of the top quarterbacks in the country for 2027 down there at St. Michael. Speaking of down there, Jamison Roberts, the Saraland quarterback, he'll be up for his first visit after getting offered a month or so ago, I want to say. Andre Adams, quarterback from Tennessee, who just recently got offered, he'll be in as well. Bobby Coleman's at pretty much every home game.
Yep.
So the quarterbacks that are coming in that 2027 class, Ken Austin and Jesse Stone are going to be busy before the game talking to those guys a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. We saw Bobby early this year. He's playing really well for Central. The number 1 team in the state as they get ready for the playoffs, which start next week for folks in Alabama, and I guess outside of Alabama as well too. Gunnar Rivers and Phillip Rivers, they play on TV tonight inside Alabama on like the AHSA TV network. So folks that haven't seen him before, they play tonight on TV So you can look through that on I think Alabama Public Television. You can find it, but you get a chance to watch him and kind of watch him in action, as a junior as well. So that's something to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, if you can't watch him, you can just go to YouTube and look up Phillip Rivers highlights as well.
You're watching very similar.
You're watching the same throw in motion. You're watching very similar player. Not saying that he'll turn out as good as Phillip, or not saying he won't be better, but it's funny when you go to his 247 profile and they do the player comps.
Yeah,
Phillip Rivers.
It's
fitting. Jason, some other 2027s that'll be in of note. 2 Alabama commitments. Chicken Garor from down there at Viger, the edge rusher, been committed to Alabama for a long time, but still keeping his options open. Visited Auburn a couple of times here. Jatori Williams, the offensive lineman from Central, he's visited Auburn a bunch this year, despite committing to Alabama.
Yep.
So that's interesting that he'll be back. And then along the offensive line, along with Jatori, some really interesting visitors. Cole Ryder, we'll go with that. Haven't got a chance to meet him and ask how his last name is pronounced. From Wisconsin is coming down. Kellen Weimer from Ohio is coming down. Have an offensive lineman, Seth Reinhart from South Dakota, who's coming down. So some cross-country treks. You add Oliver Miller from Colorado. Yeah. I mean,
touched all points of the map in the United States almost for Auburn offensive line recruiting.
Yeah, and I mean, both of those, the first 2 that I mentioned, Cole and Kellen, 4-star guys, top 247 guys that have a ton of interest. So good to get those guys down and try and make an early impression in their recruitment. One more name I'll mention, 2 more names I'll mention in 2026. Hayden Chambers, the kicker, committed to Mississippi State, taking an unofficial visit, took an official visit for the Missouri game. Auburn is still trying to make a move there. Uphill battle, but he'll be back this weekend. And then Xavier Rucker, 3-star running back, previously committed to Georgia Tech. He'll be in as well. Auburn has Eric Perry committed, although I don't really see him signing with Auburn in this class. And I think they want 2 running backs. So you mentioned guys like Cooper Crosby, Quantavious Fatboy Wiggins from Langston Hughes. Those are 2 names that are officially visiting for the Iron Bowl. Now you're getting in Rucker for an unofficial visit as well. So you've got some names piling up there at running back as Auburn looks to kind of close out this class there at that position. So those guys are worth mentioning. Other names there as well. We'll have it covered at AuburnUndercover.com. Jason, unless I'm missing anything, I think we'll probably close things out. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. I know this was not the usual on-site, on location. The city of Auburn was doing its trick-or-treating on Thursday night, although my neighborhood decided to do it Friday night. And
it's all over the map. We're doing it Thursday night, so I'll be out with the little one Thursday night. Do some trick-or-treating. Auburn basketball tonight.
Yeah.
War Eagle Plus. We'll have post-game video, some of those things from over there in Atlanta as well. So got a lot going on as you get ready for Kentucky this weekend.
Yeah, so we'll have that covered. Not at AU Club this week, as I just said, but we love them. We appreciate them for sponsoring the show. Look, we say it every week, but we mean it. One of the best golf course in Auburn, in my opinion.
Yes.
One of the best in the state by far. Incredible course, incredible conditions, incredible food at the restaurant. Gym, you have a ton of different amenities and opportunities there. And look, if you're listening to this and you're not from Auburn, you're not from this area, they have out-of-state memberships that you can get that are a screaming deal for a country club of that magnitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check them out. Tell them we sent you. And lots of things to check out. Lots of people, great folks, great food, great golf. A lot of reason to go check them out for sure.
Yeah, so appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.